is our prayer in Jesus.
Can you lead us in prayer?
Sorry, you hearing me?
Hearing you loud and clear. Can you lead us in prayer?
Father, we thank you for guiding us safely to this meeting. We ask that you be with our thoughts, our action, our deeds. Is our prayer in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much.
Morning, everyone.
Morning. Apologies for absence. Senator Roland Campbell. Apologies for her. Anybody else, Ms. Beckford?
No, Chairman.
All right. So, again, good morning to everyone. Welcome to what I anticipate will be the final meeting of the Joint Select Committee tasked with the reviewing and reporting on the Electricity Act 2015. As we discussed in our last session, we will move swiftly through the page-by-page review of the draft report today. The goal is to finalize and sign the report, ensuring it's ready for tabling as soon as possible. I'd like to remind members that if there have been any changes in your position since our last meeting, please at the right time highlight these changes and provide revised wording for consideration. Similarly, if there are any proposed amendments to the draft report, I encourage you to offer concise alternative wording for our review. In our previous meeting, we thoroughly discussed the unresolved issues. As promised, I'll present concrete positions on those matters today. The issues to be addressed are as follows. The section 44 and 45 of the second schedule, issue of who should perform the role and duties of the systems operator. Secondly, recommendations for the self-generators within the SEZs to be able to sell electricity directly to the tenants within the SEZs without having to enter into the billing arrangements with JPS. Thirdly, the recommendations for consumer protection provisions to be included in the Electricity Act. And fourthly, the
recording in progress
recommendation for the inclusion of provisions in the Act to address disasters and emergency situations. And last but not least, the dress code for virtual meetings, which I suspect will be for other committees after this, since this may be the last meeting. The committee clerk was asked to provide clarity regarding the dress code, and this information was circulated to members via email. So what I will do now at this point is to ask Ms. Campbell and or Mr. Richardson to take us through the responses. Well, first of all, the actions required and MSET's responses based on the meeting that we had internally at the ministry, for which I was a part, which should bring clarification and conclusion to these outstanding matters. Then after that, we will be in a position to move quickly in relation to the other agreed positions, unless there are any changes in relation to members having any change of thought. And at that time, we will allow them to do so if it is that. There would have been an email sent out yesterday, which I requested after my meeting with the internal team, to ask the members of the committee to please look through once again, so that today we will be able to move with alacrity. So let's deal with these four matters that were raised and discussed at the last meeting, and it was for positions to, ministry positions to be tabled at this meeting. So Ms. Campbell or Mr. Richardson, I don't know which one of you are decided to take them. Can you please go through them as they, you can put them up on the screen, I suppose. Maybe that's the best for members to be able to see. You have them, Mr. Richardson, to be able to put them up, or Ms. Campbell?
Morning, Chair. I'm retrieving the document.
You sharing?
I will share.
All right, you can share and go right ahead. We will do the minutes at the end, as usual. The confirmation of the minutes for the last meeting.
I'm having difficulty. My camera is not coming on.
All right. In the meantime, go ahead, Ms. Campbell, in the interest of time. Mr. Richardson, if you can sort that out and try and share the document as soon as possible. Go ahead, Ms. Campbell.
Sure.
There you go. There you go.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so go start with the first one, and we just move the screen according to
So on screen, we were required to come back in relation to sections, the system operators functions, and those are detailed at sections 44 and 45 of the Electricity Act. The proposal was that a decision is to be taken on whether a separate entity is to be established to take on these functions as suggested by Member Paulwell, or whether an independent party from the transmitters and generators of electricity should assume this role as suggested by the OUR, or whether the OUR should be mandated to perform these functions. The Ministry, in considering the issue, takes no objection with the view that the system operator's function and responsibility, as best as practicable, should be independent of the operations and management of the JPS. There's an assessment that needs to be done into the functions that are currently performed and the implications for establishing the independence of the system operator, including technical, financial, legal, regulatory, human resource consideration, will need to be done guided by the necessary consultation. The other recommendation is for self-generators within SEZs to be able to sell electricity directly to tenants within the SEZs without having to enter into net billing arrangements with JPS. So the ministry has considered further this proposal, and it is recognized that the Electricity Act permits the provisioning of electricity service, does not permit rather the provision of electricity service without an electricity license issued by the minister for generation, transmission, distribution, dispatch, and supply of electricity, as well as the erection, maintenance, or possession of any electric line or other works over, along, across, or under any street or public road for the purpose of supplying electricity. So having regard to the provisions in the Electricity Act, an exclusive license was issued to JPS to transmit, distribute, and supply electricity throughout Jamaica. So the services for which authorization is proposed for developers within the SEZ is currently the responsibility solely of JPS pursuant to the terms of its license. The SEZ Act also in keeping with the Electricity Act and in recognition of the terms of the license, prohibits the supply of electricity by a developer or occupant to any other person other than the single buyer for net billing purposes. Wheeling is also allowed. So in order for developers to be permitted to supply and sell electricity to customers or tenants within the SCZ independently of the grid, the SCZ Act, the JPS license would need to be amended to allow for same. Recommendation number 3 is for the OUR to be fitted with responsibilities for consumer protection. The ministry has no objection to that, and the previous discussions on this matter is instructive. We also note that the OUR and the Consumer Affairs Commission did not object to the OUR taking on some of those responsibilities. And within the climate in which we live, we can appreciate that there is need for a specific provisions authorizing the OUR to do so. So the ministry has no objection, and the OUR had given suggestions for wording previously, and those would need to be considered.
Minister, if I could just come in here, Minister.
Yeah.
Yes, I recall the proposal that I had made was for the consumer protection provisions to be incorporated into the Electricity Act. Right now, in relation to consumer protection, the Consumer Affairs Commission has that responsibility. So it's not that I'm proposing for the OUR to be saddled with those responsibilities, but just to ensure that those of us who look to the Electricity Act for guidance in terms of electricity supply and distribution, that you'll find those similar consumer protection provisions within the Electricity Act, rather than people having to search another law for them. But it is not that we are trying to saddle the OUR with the responsibility of administering those consumer protection provisions, because the law already, that is the Consumer Protection Act, already allows the CAC, Consumer Affairs Commission, to be responsible for administering those. I just thought that it would be tidier to have those provisions that deal with consumer protection embodied in the law that we are dealing with now, the Electricity Act. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
I do, and it sounds quite logical. So, Ms. Campbell, what's your response to that?
Minister, before Ms. Campbell, may I say something?
Right, Member Elton.
Yeah. I just wonder. I hear my member Paulwell on the matter about the consumer affairs, and I'm just wondering that in terms of the CAC being that role being played by the CAC, which is a consumer affairs commission. However, the technicalities, I'm just wondering about the technicalities surrounding electricity and the different issues that arise within the generation, transmission, distribution, supplies, and the impact on consumers, whether from a technical point of view, the CAC would be the appropriate body, because it to my mind, it relies on technical information in most instances to sort out the problems that affect and impact on consumers. So I wonder if we might not want to give a little more thought to that before we rise today. And specifically, I'm asking that the I'm not surprised that the OUR recognizing this fact may recognize that it have a particular role to play.
Minister, may I come in here?
Yeah, member, go ahead.
I've heard, listen carefully to what both member Paulwell and member Hilton have said, and I would tend to lean on the side where you already have an established Consumer Affairs Commission, and if technical help is needed from outside, then the Consumer Affairs Commission can employ it. But to saddle that activity with the OUR, which is already quite saddled, and to move it away from where Consumer Affairs is right now managed, all that is necessary is that for that particular activity, the CAC could get the relevant expertise brought in and conduct the consumer affairs activity from where it now resides at the CSC. So I believe that can be handled, recognizing the particular sensitive technical requirements that might be needed for such an investigation by the CSC.
Also, Minister, the OUR will remind everybody that it is not really a consumer protection agency. The OUR is a regulator that deals specifically with regulating certain technical industries or sectors, and that their mandate is not to focus on consumer protection issues, and that's the reason why we were quite clear when we were developing other legislation to ensure that there was an adequate role earmarked for the CAC that has that mandate. And these issues, though technical, the CAC has the capability to get the experts that are required to assist them in their adjudication.
Minister, to be clear, I'm not insisting on that, Minister. I think the idea that the access to the expertise by the CSC could be a solution to the concerns that I have, that as to the technical nature of that particular activity, this particular activity with regard to electricity and supply of electricity and the impact on consumers. I'm not insisting on the position.
So I take the point that Member Hill and Member Paulwell and Member Hill will be wearing two hats since the CSC falls under him, given the assurance that if there is need for technical assistance, it can be sourced, so we can accept that. Go ahead, Ms. Campbell.
Item 4, the recommendation for inclusion of provisions in the Electricity Act to address disasters and emergency situations. The recommendation made, I will read, without infringing on the role of the OUR as the regulator, a broad-based disaster committee comprising major stakeholders should be in place that would be mandated to ensure the orderly assessment and restoration of electricity to customers. Member Paula suggested that the ministry could liaise with the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development, or ADPEM, with this recommendation.
Yeah, if I may again, Minister, having gone through a couple of hurricanes, and especially this time on Beryl, where I have been through to all the parishes, as you're probably aware, Minister, I would want to see, because there's such a link to the commercial activities of the country. It disrupts the commercial activities. I just believe that such a disaster stakeholder should include representative from the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. Because if commerce is moving or if things are down that stop commerce, the stakeholder meeting need to understand how vital it is to have that going. And I think we should be represented there.
I would support that.
Well, the fact of the matter is that there is a National Disaster Risk Management Council, and therefore representation should be made to that council, which I suspect is chaired by either the Minister of Local Government or the Prime Minister, for that request for that Minister Hill.
Well, it's that it's really not it's really not for Minister Hill. It's really for the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce to be part of that council, and that recommendation could properly come.
That's the point I'm making. That's the point I'm making, that the representation will have to be made to the National Disaster Risk Management Council for a seat on that council.
And I'm saying the recommendation could come from this body.
Yeah, but again, I mean, the truth of the matter is that it can come from this body, but at the same time, it can also come directly from the ministry that's requesting it as well.
I agree. But Minister Vaz, aren't we talking about two different things here? What I'm seeing here is, without infringing on the role of the OIR as a regulator, broad-based disaster committee comprising major stakeholders should be in place that would be mandated to ensure the orderly assessment and restoration of electricity to customers. It's at this era that I'm saying MIIC might be absent at the higher one, and we should make provision and submission to be there. But for this one, which is really underground, everyday activity, I believe MIIC should be represented here as well, because this is separate from the bigger committee that you're mentioning, and we're also much aware of. But right here, I've seen when I went to St. Elizabeth the day after the hurricane, I could see what was happening, and then clearly right after that, Jem and others were in Treasure Beach looking to return water to get a generator to get the pump back on. So if you're going to have this at this level, I believe the commercial sector should be represented. And I take your point about the odd PEM type higher committee.
Yeah. Well, I definitely have no objection to that. What I can tell you is that coming out of Beryl and the experiences that we have had with Beryl, it can't be business as usual. So I'm sure that we are going to have a complete review and make necessary changes to make sure that we can respond in a more timely manner. And of course, the issue of normalcy as against a disaster and the role of the government with essential services in a disaster is also another major thing now. But I guess that will be looked at through the lens of cabinet. But definitely, there's many lessons to be learned in relation to this recent experience of Beryl. So I have no issue with that request, Member Hill. Go ahead, Ms. Campbell.
Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, for the purposes of the report, I need to be absolutely clear. So is the recommendation that there is to be another body separate from the National Disaster Risk Management Body that will do this?
That's how this reads.
Yeah, that was a recommendation. So I guess
Yes.
what is happening is that the committee is accepting that recommendation then.
Correct. Is that it, Ms. Campbell, or there's more?
So the recommendation is, well, the ministry accepts the agree that the government should have a role in principle, and we recognize that we will need to do a further scan of other jurisdictions to see how it is treated in any legislation. But we do recognize that the chief executive officer of because in the context of the discussions, as I recall it, was that there is a national committee, and the JPS from our research is listed as a member of that national response committee. And from there, a plan is developed which contains arrangement for a coordinated national response to threat, event, and aftermath of a disaster in Jamaica. I think that is the extent of the matters that the ministry was required to return on.
All right, members, if there's any comments on any of the four matters that have been clarified from the last meeting, I think you need to go back to the SEZ, Ms. Campbell, because it says what needs to be done, but it doesn't tell us the next steps in terms of what we discussed at the meeting yesterday, our internal meeting. And Member Hill is also critical in this, because obviously it says that SEZ Act would need to be amended along with the JPS license. So is it that we get guidance from the Attorney General's chambers in relation to the license, and that the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce pursue
We need to consult with them
to the SEZ Act? There is a formal response from the SEZ to this matter. Do you have that letter to put on the screen?
I can find it, Minister.
So Richardson, you have that? This is one of Member Hilton's pet peeves. So I'm happy that he's here.
It is on screen.
Hello.
Should I read it?
No, after, yes, just read it so for the benefit of everybody.
Sure. Further to email received, and this is a letter from the SEZ. It says, further to email received from the Ministry of Science, Energy, Technology, as it was then, on March 14, 2023, inviting the Special Economic Zone Authority to provide comments on the amendments to the Electricity Act. The authority hereby submits recommendations for consideration in amending the Electricity Act. The authority would like to take this opportunity to thank the ministry for inviting feedback. In order to ascertain the appetite for the provision of electricity within SEZ, a survey of SEZ stakeholders was undertaken, the results of which are attached to this letter. The survey had 27 developers respondents, comprising 9 multipurpose developers, 16 single entities, and 2 specialized zones. Of the 27, 20 expressed having interest in electricity generation in their zone, either for self-use or for providing electricity to their occupants and zone users, citing cost and cutting and sustainability as the top 2 reasons, respectively. Proposed amendments to the Electricity Act. After due consideration, the authority believes that the following amendments to the Electricity Act would enhance the competitiveness of SEZs in Jamaica. 1. Allow SEZ developers to provide electricity sale and transmission to their zones, specifically to their occupants and zone users. It is important to note that to support this amendment, Section 41 of the SEZ Act may also need to be amended by way of a special provision to facilitate this change. A renewable energy mandate may be considered as the policy driver for this amendment. An example of which is to align the size of the zone to an agreed percentage of megawatts coming from renewable sources. 2, SEZ developers may be explicitly permitted to sell to the grid as independent power producers. 3, zone-to-zone wheeling may be explicitly allowed. On to policy considerations. Given the wider policy implications and potential impact of GOJ revenue, the authority, along with providing its recommendation, has also raised, as set out below, several scenarios to further guide the discussions around the reform of the electricity. Number 1, consideration for wheeling to be allowed between connected parties where one is in the SEZ and the other is in the domestic territory. Specifically, A, allow wheeling from the domestic territory to the SEZ, but not allow from SEZ to the domestic territory. B, allow wheeling from the SEZ to the domestic territory, but not allow from the domestic territory to the SEZ. C, allow free flow from SEZ to domestic territory and vice versa. Number 2, for further discussion and clarification, would a company be permitted to explicitly and exclusively set up in a SEZ as A, an occupant to generate, transmit, and sell electricity in and for the SEZ they are situated in? B, allow an occupant whose core income generating activity is electricity to generate, transmit, and sell electricity to the domestic territory or to both the SEZ and the domestic territory. C, allow a single entity SEZ to be set up where its core income generating activity is to generate, transmit, and sell electricity to the domestic territory and or to the SEZs or both.
Minister, Chairman.
Go ahead, Member Hilton.
This response from the SEC authorities quite wide-ranging, wide-ranging response, and in fairness, it does brings into view the widest possible set of considerations, which include as well, essentially, that JPS could become an SEZ, declared an SEZ, or its activities be subsuming an SEZ. As was pointed out, the implication for the governing revenues would be significant, and it would really introduce a whole different model in the sector. Perhaps the debate debate should start, but I just note that it goes way beyond anything that I had even contemplated or thought about. But so be it. It's a set of policy considerations, I suppose, and I think the debate should begin. But I'm very clear that it widens the lenses very much beyond anything that was initially contemplated.
Can you scroll up? Let me see the signatory on the letter, please. Okay, the CEO signed it. All right. I think, yes, this is very broad. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think this is very broad, but it brings into clear relief some of the early discussions we had when we started the Joint Select Committee. Clearly, things have moved on since 2015, and a whole range of considerations have come in. The SEC really came alive in the 2015 Act, and so a great deal of development. We probably now have 148 members or so in our SEZ. So it's time to consider. They want to clearly be able to produce their own electricity. Now, the way the Act allows, right now, some people are using a work around it. I'm not going to get the detail of that here, but we need to consider again, since we're talking about the whole issue, as to how I don't believe we can have two distribution systems in the country. It's not big enough for it. We don't have enough demand. I mean, the country is not the geographic size I'm talking about. I'm talking about the size of the demand for electricity, not there to support two transmission and distribution facility. But clearly, the provision of power should and can be and I think must be divided, and maybe the distribution remain one, but separated and put on the stock market, where, because it's now that would be a monopoly, ordinary Jamaicans should be able to benefit from a possible source of monopoly profits. But that's a big consideration down the line. What the SEZ is suggesting here is that people who are spending significant amount of money to build out their space do want the right to produce their electricity. They have to buy tremendous amount of transmission and all kinds of stuff from the 450 kV line and all that from JPS. They want to look at developing their own, and I believe, truthfully, after Beryl, Mr. Minister, we need more sources, more sources of investors, and more sources of delivery of power, so that the country really is not held hostage by only one main supplier of power. I'm not talking about transmission now. It's a different discussion. So we need to consider this. It's broad, as Member Hilton said, but this is the time where we are looking at the Act, and this is the time to consider these. And I believe that we do the country well if we were to do that and arrive at a solution that serves us better into the future, given the experiences we've just had and the ones that we've had in the recent past.
Minister?
Go ahead, Member Paul.
Yes, I'm sorry that I'm in and out, but I'm actually in my constituency while conducting this meeting. We have a serious water problem, and we've just found out that it has a lot to do with electricity supply or lack of electricity supply. So you can appreciate that this is an emergency for me. So that's the reason why I'm not fully involved in the meeting today. But I want to endorse the comments made by Minister Hill and Member Hilton. And if you don't hear from me for a little bit, it's not that I'm not listening to you, but I'm trying to fix a problem that we have here now. And I'm going to be in touch with.
Dressed as well. That's why you're not properly dressed for Parliament.
That is correct. That is correct. That is correct.
I'm sure the people are happy to see you.
They see me every day.
It's about time, Sir Chairman.
Yeah.
All right. I'm listening. I'm listening though.
No problem. So Member Hilton, Member Hill, the truth of the matter is that this matter has been discussed for a very long time. Member Hilton has been one who has been pushing it in and out of this committee in relation to finding a solution to make the SEZs be able to have a cheaper cost of electricity. So, Member Hill, SEZ falls under you. You have seen what your interim CEO has written, and it's a matter now that I think we need to take to.
She is now the full CEO. She has been appointed by the board.
Great, great. Good to hear. So, yes, so I think that obviously there's some policy considerations that we'll have to take into consideration. I suspect it may need to go to cabinet. On one hand, in terms of the SEZ amendments,
We're working on those now, Minister Vaz, and we'll take guidance as it comes from MSET in
great.
relation to this
And
particular.
in relation to the license, Ms. Campbell and Mr. Richardson, I would need to know what are the next steps in relation to looking at that to see exactly what is the route that we will have to take once the SEZ has come with their position in terms of their proposed policy and amendments. But this is something that we've been talking about for years. And obviously, the time is of the essence. So we really want to get this particular situation, a conclusion to it one way or another. So I urge Minister Hill.
Minister Vaz, I want to remind you of the comment that we all heard we in cabinet heard concerning the consideration discussion between the revenue cap and the price cap of vital. That is, I'm reminding you because I know it's right there on top of memory for you.
Sure.
And the license, that relates to the license.
Point taken, yes. Point taken. All right, so we have discussed this particular matter, and everybody has been able to give their take on it. So that would conclude the 4 matters that we discussed at the last meeting, which we were to come back on. So, Ms. Beckford, are you clear in relation to the positions that have been taken here now for the record?
Chairman, it would be good if you just say what the final recommendation is.
The final
of the committee.
The final recommendation from the committee on this is that the member Hill, who is the minister responsible for the SEZ, will be looking at the act and be guided on policy decisions that will have to be taken at a higher level, obviously, which could include the cabinet. And in relation to the license, based on the information that we have in front of us, based on the research that we have done, which it means it will require an amendment to the JPS license, the Ministry of Energy will pursue that with the AGC and other entities, OUR, etc., in relation to what would have to be done in order to facilitate the recommendations that will come from the SEZ in terms of the act, the amendments to the act, which would guide us in relation to the amendments to the license.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right, so Ms. Campbell, I think we have a position on the 4 outstanding matters. So really it is now to see whether or not there's any other issue that any member would like to raise in relation to the clauses that we have already gone through and taken a position on. If there's none, then what you...
Minister, just to be clear, you mentioned the SEZ Act that would require some amendment based upon the policy position to be adopted. But similarly, the Electricity Act itself would have to be amended as well as whatever advice you get from the AGs on the licenses itself. So I think all 3 pieces of legislation license would be implicated in it.
Thanks for that. I thought that would be a given, but thanks for that clarification. So it will be the SEZ Act, the Electricity Act, and the JPS license. That would all have to be reviewed in tandem.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, member. All right, Ms. Campbell. Sir Richardson, you want to go now to the draft report? Not hearing you, Mr. Richardson, if you are speaking.
Heard me now, Minister and members?
Yes, sir. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Mr.
So, Ms. Campbell, the report is up, so just tell me where you want me to scroll it to, and I'll take you there.
Hello? Am I being heard?
Minister Vaz, I see something on the screen here. I just had to take another call. Can somebody just bring me up to date what it is?
This is the draft report. The draft report coming out of the deliberations.
Which I have. It's a report of, let me see now,
It requires
about 90 pages. That's a 90-page report.
That's correct. All of which have been gone through clause by clause over the period of the Joint Select Committee.
I have it and will be reviewing, especially as it relates to the license. I'm going to pick out those parts and look at the license because that's vital for us.
Go ahead, Ms. Campbell.
So we will begin at on page 1.
Page what, Ms. Campbell?
Page 1.
Thank you.
Is there any recommendation for adjustment, assuming the report was read? There's now, we'll move to page 2.
So Member Hill, this is a draft report of the conclusion of the deliberations of the committee.
Yeah.
So what we are trying to do is we're trying to get a conclusion on this so that we can actually all sign the report so it can be prepared to go to Parliament.
We're trying to do that today, Minister.
Well, we had sent out an email asking for everybody to review it and come with any issues that they may have, because obviously this was all agreed on the persons who participated. I mean, if it is that it's going to require further review and further time, we may have to have another meeting. But basically, this is the agreed position of the members on the review of the act.
Given that it's so important, Minister, I'm going to beg the indulgence for another few days, because I really do want to, as you know, I do have a keen interest in this as it affects our commercial activities and elsewhere. It's quite a lengthy report. I'd like to just have a few more days to just go through it and come back. I won't take long. You can set a short timeline and I'll be ready, if it's by the end of this week or early next week.
Mm-hmm. No problem. Is there any other member that is on the platform here who has or wishes to raise any issues in relation to the draft report and what is being put forward for confirmation? I know Member Hilton, Member Paulwell, and Member Miller, Member Shireen, and William Campbell all were keen participants of the review. So Member Hill, for you, obviously, we can accommodate that, but I just want to know if there's any other member that has any major issues, so that when we come back, it will just be for you to be able to give us your input. Member Hilton? Member Miller?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Yes, I'm here.
No, just checking to see whether you had gone through the report and if there's anything that jumps out at you based on all the deliberations that we undertook.
I went through the report and nothing stand out. I think everything in the report that I saw was in accordance with what we read and discussed as a committee. So it's fine with.
All right.
Yeah.
Member Hilton?
Same here.
Same there for you? Sorry, is that same there for you, Member Hilton, you said?
Yeah, so I said I've reviewed it and I think it is consistent with the discussion.
Good. Any other member?
I'm good.
Great, Sir Fitz, you're here?
Watching and listening keenly.
Always. You don't take your eye off of me for a second.
Not for a split second.
All right, so in that case, I
just mentioned, Minister, that on the opposition side, we had caucus on the last meeting before Member Paul had advanced the issues that we had concurred around. So we are basically at one.
Then Minister Vaz, let me commit to come back to you by Friday if I have any issues, so that I don't keep up the whole thing for longer than that. I'll come back to you by Friday and give you my yes or no if I have any particular issue that I want raised, and we can have it from there.
Great.
So I wouldn't want to hold up the meeting longer than that. Great.
So, Ms. Beckford, you have to guide me in terms of where we are now. We're going to give Member Hill the opportunity, since he was not in attendance at a number of the meetings until Friday. Does that mean we would have to have another meeting and
only if I were to have important changes, Minister Vaz?
Yeah,
I might not.
Correct, Chairman.
So we're not able to fully sign off on it unless we get Minister Hill. But can we take the position that the members present on the platform today have no issue with the draft report, save and except for Member Hill, who will come back to us on Friday? If he does have, then it means that we'd have to have another meeting to go through it. If he does not have, then we could have a sign off on the report. Please guide me. Yes. Please guide me on that, Ms. Beckford.
Yes, Chairman. So
excuse me, Chair. I had my hand up, but I'm not sure if it's being seen.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, the AGC is here. Go ahead. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm not a member, but I had some concerns with the proposals in relation to Section 54 in the draft report. So that's further down. So I don't know if you want to take that at another time.
No. Take it right now. Go ahead.
Okay, so that would be page, let me see what page this is. Page 65 of the report.
Yep, Section 54, fixed penalty per schedule.
Yes. Okay, so where it says a member of your committee who observed that placing fixed penalty provisions in the primary legislation often resulted in outdated penalties, particularly when no reviews of the legislation are conducted. And the suggestion that the penalties and offenses in the Electricity Act should instead be done by order of the minister. And then it goes on to say, the ministry therefore proposed that Section 54(1) be amended to provide that the word regulations should apply not only to offenses created in the Act, but also offenses in regulations made under the Act. Okay, so the first part about the suggestion that the penalties and offenses should instead be done by order of the minister. I want to respond to that part. I am not sure where the problem lies, because when I look at section 56 of the Electricity Act, it does permit the minister by order, of course, once it's subject to affirmative resolution, to amend any monetary penalty specified in the Act, and that would include regulations, and to amend any schedule in the Act. And the first schedule is the one that deals with fixed penalties. So if it is amended by order by the minister, then additional penalties can be added to that schedule. Penalties can be amended, the figures can be amended, can be deleted, anything like that. So I think that issue is already addressed in the Act. So I'm not sure if there was a further concern, but from my view of it, I don't think any proposal should be made to amend section 54(1). And also,
so you're saying section 56 of the Act gives the minister what he needs to do what he has to do. So this is superfluous.
Yes, I'm not sure if there was some other issue raised, but as I see it, I don't think there is an issue, because section 56 of the Act already, in my view, deals with the issue being the concern that was raised. And then where it says the ministry proposed that section 54(1) be amended to provide that the word regulations should apply. When I looked at that section 54(1), it doesn't, the word regulations is not mentioned in there. So I'm not sure if that was an error. So, perhaps that section, that sentence could be deleted. Because section 54(1) doesn't refer to the word regulations.
Ms. Campbell?
I have no objection, Minister.
All right. Thanks for that. From the AGC?
Yes, you're welcome. I'm just seeing there was one more issue. Okay, so it goes back to the same point I made. So in the Roman numeral 4, in terms of the recommendations, I think that section can be deleted. It says the recommendation is that a new paragraph D be added to include fixed penalties in relation to offenses under this Act or any regulations made. But that wouldn't be necessary based on what I had said previously, that section 56 already empowers the minister by order to amend monetary penalties and the schedules.
Ms. Campbell, you got that?
I'm following, Minister. I was just going back to my records.
All right, let me know when we can move on.
You can move on, Minister.
All right. So going back to the point I was raised before. So Ms. Beckford, you're saying that we can have an affirmative position on the draft report, which would be ratified by the members on the platform as we speak, except for Member Hill, who says he will respond to us on Friday. By that time, if there is a need for another meeting, we'll have a quick meeting early next week to take his points, his issues under consideration, and obviously take a position on it as a committee. If he does not have it, any changes that require a meeting,
I'll sign off with everybody.
then he will send something confirming his affirmative position. Is that okay, Ms. Beckford?
Yes, Chairman, that's okay. And just be reminded that since it's a majority report, it will have to be signed by 50% plus one of the membership in order to be tabled.
So we will be in a position to do that after Friday, one way or the other, as soon as
Right.
the issues of Member Hill, everybody will be prepared and ready to sign.
Right.
So,
Sorry, just another point. I noticed when I read through the report, I think there's some sections that are not completed because I see where it says your committee ... for a number of the paragraphs. So I'm not sure if it is that a decision was not made or if it will be included. For example, on page 70, under the second schedule, the last two paragraphs, there may be some others throughout the report as well, but I'm just seeing these right now, where it says your committee ... at
Ms.
the bottom of
Bedford,
page 70.
can you shine some light on that first, please?
I think there are a number of those.
Those would be related specifically to those issues that had been outstanding, and those
Okay.
have dealt with this morning. So those sections will be updated accordingly.
Okay, so those sections are updated based on the positions taken today on the outstanding matters.
Yes, Chairman.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for that. All right, so before we close off, the reading and confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held July 30th, 2024, which are straightforward, and basically we dealt with the outstanding matters from that meeting today. So could I have somebody move to confirm those minutes for me, please, and second them?
Member Hilton?
I think Member Paulwell was at that meeting. I don't remember who else was at that meeting. Who else? Oh, I have it here. So we had Member Golden, Member Miller, Member Paulwell.
So Member Miller could move, and I can second it. I wasn't at the meeting, but I can second it.
Member Miller, can you move for me?
Yes, sir, Chair. I'm trying to unmute. Let me apologize. Yes, sir, Chair.
Yeah, you can move the
Yes, sir. I moved to.
All right. Move for the minutes, confirmation that the minutes held July 30th, and obviously Member Hill second. Matters arising from the minutes. I think that the matters arising from the minutes were dealt with today at today's meeting. So unless anybody else has anything else they want to raise on the matters arising, we will move on. And let me once again, hopefully this time we've gotten it right, thank everybody who has been a part of this Joint Select Committee, the members especially, the supporting staff from the Ministry of Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport, the Attorney General's Chambers, Office of the Parliamentary Council, Legal Reform Department, the OUR, the House of Parliament, especially Ms. Beckford, and obviously parliamentary interns were also involved, which is a good sign. It has been a long and tedious process, but thankfully we are at the stage where we can hope to sign off as early as next week. And therefore that would allow for the tabling in Parliament and of course more robust debate on this very important matter. Again, it has been a privilege to chair as the Minister responsible for energy, but I could not have done it without the members and the supporting from the ministry and the other agencies. So we look forward to hearing back from Minister Hill, and if necessary, have a quick short meeting next week for which we will confirm the best dates possible for that and allow us to conclude this Joint Select Committee of the Electricity Act 2015. Once again, thank you very much. And I think that it has been a great learning experience for us all. in relation to some of the matters that we have had to contend with in this review. Again, thanks very much. And I look forward to hearing from Member Hill. And then I'll be in touch with you, Ms. Beckford, and the members to indicate what the next steps are. Thanks again. Keep safe. God bless you all.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Sir Chair. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and colleagues.
Fitz, I'll talk to you on the matter we spoke about here.
Yes, I was about to call, text you on it too. So give me a call when you get a chance.
Yeah, I'm having a meeting. The chairman is off, but I'm gonna have a Zoom meeting in the coming week, and then I'll see you at the JUTC launch, hopefully for the buses next week.
All right.
The 27th. I sent out the letters yesterday, but we talk in person.
All right then, fine. Thanks.
Okay.